You signed the prenup, Aaron. That means you leave with the same thing you came with. Absolutely nothing. Marcus's cruel laugh echoed through the sterile penthouse as he draped his arm around his pregnant mistress. He thought he had won. He saw the quiet woman in a cheap coat trembling before him and believed she was defeated, but he never stopped to consider who she might call. He had no idea that the black sport utility vehicle, pulling up 42 floors below, was not a taxi, but a car sent by his biggest corporate rival. Marcus was about to learn a very hard lesson. Silence does not equal weakness. This story will show you why the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, why you should never mistake kindness for weakness, and why the man who thinks he has won everything is usually the one who is about to lose it all. Stay until the end, because the moment she hands him that $1 bill will change how you see power forever. This was the calm before the storm. The rain in Seattle usually felt like a simple warning, but on this Tuesday night, it felt like a final sentence. Aaron stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse on the 42nd floor. She watched the city lights melt into a blur through the downpour. Behind her, the only sound in the vast, cold living room was the harsh tear of a zipper being pulled shut. "Are you even listening to me?" Marcus's voice was a sharp blade, the same one he had used to chip away at her self-worth for 3 years. Aaron turned around slowly. Her husband, Marcus Vance, stood near the doorway with a leather suitcase at his feet. It was not his suitcase. It was hers, the same old beaten-up case she had with her when she moved in 3 years ago. "I heard you, Marcus," she said quietly. Her voice was firm, but inside her cardigan pockets, her hands were shaking. "You want me to leave?" "I don't just want you out, Aaron. I am kicking you out, tonight." Marcus glanced at his Rolex, a platinum watch she knew was worth more than her father's entire retirement savings. "Lydia is moving in tomorrow morning. I don't want her to see your clutter. It is bad for the baby's energy." The name Lydia felt like a spike of ice driving into Aaron's chest. Lydia was not just some woman. She was Marcus's own personal assistant, a woman Aaron had once cooked dinner for, a woman Aaron had thanked for clearing Marcus's schedule so he could be home for their anniversary, the same anniversary he had spent the entire time texting Lydia under the table. "She's pregnant," Aaron stated, not as a question. The whispers from the doorman and the cleaning staff, who always looked at her with pity, had reached her weeks ago. 4 months. A smirk appeared on Marcus's face as he adjusted his silk tie. "It's a boy, an heir, something you clearly were unable to provide." That was the most vicious blow. Marcus knew all about her medical complications, the secret visits to Dr. Henderson, and the tears she cried alone in the guest bathroom. He knew she craved a family more than anything. "We have a lease, Marcus. My name is on the building security list." Aaron tried to reason with him, knowing it was useless. Marcus let out a dry, humorless laugh. He walked to the coffee table and picked up a thick envelope. He tossed it right at her. It hit her in the chest and then fluttered to the carpet. "That is the divorce filing, and a reminder of the prenuptial agreement you signed. Article 4, Section 2. In the event of infidelity or a divorce started by the higher-earning spouse, the dependent spouse gives up all rights to alimony, property, and assets." Aaron looked down at the papers. "I never cheated on you." "It doesn't matter," Marcus sneered, taking a step closer to tower over her. "I have very aggressive lawyers, Aaron. Silas Thorne is representing me. Do you have any idea what he bills per hour? It is more than you used to earn in a whole year as a librarian. If you try to fight me, I will bury you under so many legal fees you will be begging to sleep in a cardboard box. Just sign the uncontested divorce papers, take your trash, and get out." He kicked the suitcase in her direction. She stared at the man she had married. She remembered the incredible charm he had when they met 3 years ago, the humble architect who claimed to love her quiet intelligence. It had all been an act. He married her because she was safe, a nobody from nowhere who would not challenge him as he built his empire, or so he had thought. "You are making a mistake, Marcus," Erin said, her voice sinking to a whisper. "The only mistake I made was believing you could ever fit into my world," he shot back. "You are dull, Erin. You have no connections, no ambition, and absolutely no style. Lydia, she fits my brand. You are just a placeholder." The private elevator chimed, and its doors slid open. 2 security guards, men Erin greeted by name every morning, stepped inside. They looked at the floor, unable to make eye contact with her. "Escort Mrs. Vance out," Marcus commanded, turning his back to pour a glass of scotch. "And take her key card." "Mr. Vance, it is pouring rain outside," one of the guards, a kind man named Jerry, muttered. "Not my problem, Jerry. Do your job, or I will find someone who will." Erin raised her hand to stop Jerry from taking her arm. "It is okay, Jerry. I can walk." She bent down to pick up the envelope and her suitcase. She did not pack any of her clothes. She did not take the jewelry he had bought her for public appearances. She did not take the tablet or the credit cards. She took only the suitcase she had arrived with. When she reached the elevator, she stopped and looked back at Marcus. He was sipping his drink, admiring his own reflection in the dark window. "Marcus," she said. He did not turn. "Goodbye, Erin. I hope you remember this moment," she said, her voice chillingly calm. "I hope you remember exactly how it felt to be this powerful." The elevator doors slid closed, sealing her off from the life she had tried so hard to build. The trip down took 40 seconds. The moment Erin stepped out of the lobby of the Obsidian Tower, the cold wind hit her face. The rain was coming down in a torrent. She had no umbrella. She dragged her suitcase across the wet pavement of 4th Avenue. She had only $63 in her pocket. Her personal bank account had been emptied. Marcus had joint access and had no doubt frozen it as a tactic to prevent her from hiring a lawyer. She walked for 2 blocks, her sneakers soaking wet, before finding shelter under the awning of a closed coffee shop. She shivered, pulling her coat tighter. People rushed by, ignoring her. To them, she was just another sad sight in the city at night. But Erin was not crying. She reached into the lining of her suitcase and tore a small seam she had sewn there years ago. Her fingers found a small, hard piece of plastic. It was a burner phone and a tiny notebook that had a single number written on its first page. She had promised herself she would never make this call. She had left that life behind 10 years ago to have a normal, humble existence, away from the spotlight, away from the pressure, and away from him. She had wanted to be loved for herself, not for the name she was born with. Marcus had loved Erin the librarian, but he had just destroyed her. Now, he was about to meet Erin Vanderquilt. She switched on the old phone. The battery was almost dead. Her fingers, numb from the cold, dialed the number. It rang once, then twice. "This is a private line," a deep, sharp voice answered. "Identify yourself." Erin took a breath, smelling the mickin of rain and car exhaust in the air. "It is me, Julian," she whispered. There was a profound silence on the other end, so long she thought the connection was lost. Then she heard a chair scraping backward, quick movement, and a sense of urgency. "Elle?" The voice cracked, losing its corporate steel tone. "Erin, is that you? My God, we have been looking for you. Where are you?" "I am in Seattle," she said, her own voice finally breaking as the adrenaline faded. "I made a mistake, Julian. You were right. You were right Sir, about everything. Are you safe? The voice was now demanding, the tone of a man used to leading armies, or in his case, a global company. No, she admitted, watching a homeless man who was eyeing her suitcase from a few yards away. I am on the street. He kicked me out. He left me with nothing. Who? The word was a low growl. My husband, Marcus Vance. Vance. Julian repeated the name as if it were poison. The architect, the one who puts up those cheap high-rises downtown. Yes. Stay exactly where you are. Share your location. Do not move. Julian, I do not want to come back to the family. I just need a lawyer. A good one. You do not need a lawyer, Elle, Julian said, and she could hear a car door slam in the background on his end, followed by the sound of a private jet engine starting up nearby. You need a war counsel, and you are getting one. He says I signed a prenup. He says I get nothing. Julian laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound that made Marcus's earlier laugh seem like a child's giggle. He thinks he is playing checkers, Elle. He has no idea he just flipped the board on a grandmaster. I am coming to get you, and God have mercy on Mr. Vance, because I certainly will not. Erin ended the call. She slid down the brick wall of the coffee shop, sitting on her suitcase. She watched the rain fall, as if it were washing away the last 3 years of her life. Marcus Vance had wanted a trophy wife. He had thrown away a librarian. But he had just declared war on the sole heir of the Vanderquilt tech empire, and her brother, the most ruthless chief executive officer on the East Coast, was already in the air. The rain had become a solid sheet of gray when headlights cut through the darkness. It was not just one car. It was 3 sleek, black Cadillac Escalades with tinted windows, moving in a tight, predatory group that forced the few taxis on the road to get out of the way. They screeched to a stop in front of the coffee shop. The door of the lead car flew open before the wheels had completely stopped rolling. A man stepped out. He did not run, despite the downpour. He moved with a terrifying sense of purpose. He was tall, dressed in a custom-made charcoal suit that likely cost more than the coffee shop's yearly profits. He ignored the puddles that were ruining his Italian leather shoes. Erin stood up, her legs shaking. Julian Vanderquilt, the chief executive officer of Vanderquilt Industries, and a man Forbes had called the Iceman, closed the distance in 3 long strides. In that moment, he did not look like a chief executive officer. He looked like a brother who was ready to burn the whole world down. He pulled her into a powerful embrace, burying his face in her drenched, tangled hair. I am here now, he whispered, his voice cracking with an emotion he rarely ever showed. I am here now. Elle, you are safe. He drew back, his hands firm on her shoulders as he searched her face. He saw the exhaustion in her puffy eyes, the sunken hollows of her cheeks, and the cheap, soaking, wet coat she wore. His jaw clenched so tightly that a muscle pulsed near his ear. Did he lay a hand on you? Julian asked, his voice a low and threatening rumble. No, Erin said, brushing rainwater from her skin. He just destroyed me, Julian. He threw me away like I was trash. Julian signaled to the burly men who had emerged from the other cars. They were his personal security team. Retrieve her luggage. She will ride in the middle car with me. Contact the pilot and inform him our plans have changed for tonight. Reserve the entire penthouse floor at the Fairmont Olympic. Then, get Dr. Orris on the line. I want him to examine her. Yes, Mr. Vanderquilt. The security chief gave a short nod and picked up Erin's worn-out suitcase with more care than Marcus had ever given her. Once inside the quiet warmth of the sport utility vehicle, enveloped by the scent of heated leather and the gentle purr of the engine, Erin finally let herself collapse. She sobbed for the 3 years she had lived a lie. She sobbed for the child she could never have and for the husband who made her feel it was her fault. She sobbed for being such a fool, for believing she could run from her family's legacy and find a man who loved her for herself, not for her inheritance. Julian remained beside her, quietly holding her hand and allowing her to cry it all out. He did not offer any empty words of comfort. He just gave her a silk handkerchief and waited patiently. By the time her tears began to slow, the vehicle was gliding effortlessly through the streets of Seattle. Erin gazed out the window, her voice just a whisper. "I told you this would happen. A decade ago, I said that all I wanted was to be a normal person." She continued, "I became Erin Vance, and before that, I was Erin Hart. My only wish was for a life where people did not see me as a walking bank account." Julian's voice was gentle as he replied, "And I honored that wish. I made sure the family stayed away. I arranged for you to have that apartment. I let you take that job at the library. I even had our security detail stand down so you would not feel like you were being watched." He paused, and his hand tightened around hers. "But my team never stopped running the background checks. I knew all about the affair, Erin." Her head snapped toward him in shock. "You have known for 2 months," he confirmed. "I possess a file on Lydia Cross that is 3 inches thick. I was waiting for you to discover it on your own. I could not step in without violating our agreement. But when I received a security alert that your other phone was turned back on, I knew it was all over." Julian reached into the seat pocket before him and retrieved a small tablet. He touched the screen once and passed it over to her. It displayed a live feed from the stock exchange, zeroed in on the real estate and construction industries. "Marcus fancies himself a major player in Seattle," Julian stated, his voice regaining its familiar, cold business tone. "He just secured the building contract for the new city stadium, did he not? That is what made him feel brave enough to cast you aside today. He believes he is invincible now." Erin nodded slowly. "He called it his golden ticket." "It is not a ticket. It is a rope for his own neck," Julian corrected. "He put up everything he owns as collateral to win that contract. He has no available cash. He is completely dependent on loans, which came mostly from Seattle First Bank." Erin stared at him, her tired expression filled with confusion. "How could you possibly know all of that?" Julian allowed a small, merciless smile to form. "Because, my dear little sister, Vanderquilt Industries finalized the acquisition of Seattle First Bank late this afternoon. The deal was completed just 10 minutes before I came to get you." Erin's breath caught in her throat. "You bought his bank?" "I bought his financial obligations," Julian clarified. "I hold the note on his house. I hold the notes on his business loans. I hold the credit card accounts he uses to shower his mistress with jewelry. In effect, as of a few hours ago, I own him." The car glided to a stop in front of the hotel. Doormen hurried to welcome them. "So," Julian said as he helped her from the car, "we are left with 2 choices. Option A is that I begin foreclosure proceedings tomorrow morning, destroy his credit rating, and have him bankrupt before lunchtime. It is quick. It is clean." Erin stood on the sidewalk, now shielded from the rain by an umbrella, held by a security guard. She pictured Marcus and his condescending laugh. She pictured him checking his watch as he threw her out. She pictured Lydia moving into her house and putting her hands on her personal things. "No," Erin declared, her voice becoming firm. "That is far too simple. He has to suffer. He needs to be in a courtroom, believing he is about to win, just so we can see the hope drain from his face." A wide grin spread across Julian's face. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely pleased. "Option B it is then, the slow and painful method. First, Let us get you a hot shower and something to eat. Tomorrow, we will do some shopping. If you are preparing for a war, Aaron, you must dress like a Vanderquilt. 3 days later, Marcus Vance was standing in the middle of his living room, holding a glass of champagne. The rain had finally ceased, and the Seattle skyline sparkled. "Honey, do you like this gray couch?" Lydia's voice called out. She was already in the process of redecorating. Aaron's comfortable vintage armchairs had vanished, replaced with angular, modern Italian pieces that looked both expensive and unpleasant. "Whatever you want, Lyd," Marcus answered, walking over to kiss her on the forehead. "You are the woman of the house now. I just want to get rid of any of her negative energy." Lydia pouted, her hand resting on her small baby bump. "Has she signed the divorce papers yet?" "She will, Wadit," Marcus said with a sneer. "She is broke. She has no family, and she has nowhere else to turn. She is likely staying in a homeless shelter. She will sign them just to get the $5,000 relocation payment I so generously offered her." Just then the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Vance," the concierge's voice announced, "you have been served legal documents." Marcus frowned. "Send them up." A few moments later, a courier handed him a thick envelope. Marcus tore it open, fully expecting to see the signed, simple divorce forms. Instead, he saw large, bold letters across the top of the first page. Notice of contested divorce and countersuit seeking extensive damages. Marcus scanned the legal document, his face flushing with anger. She is actually fighting this. On what basis? Emotional distress? Fraud? He let out a sharp laugh and tossed the papers onto his new glass table. The woman is delusional. She found some lawyer from a strip mall to try and intimidate me. He picked up his phone and called Silas Thorne. "Silas, my ex-wife is attempting to challenge me." Silas's voice came through the phone, smooth and unimpressed. "I saw the electronic filing, Marcus. It is quite charming. They filed it in King County Superior Court. The hearing is scheduled for Friday. It is an emergency motion for spousal support." Marcus roared into the phone. "Spousal support? The prenuptial agreement specifically waives that right." Silas explained calmly, "We will go into the courtroom, show the judge the agreement, and he will dismiss her case in less than 10 minutes. It will cost you about an hour of my billing time, but seeing her fail will be amusing." "Do you want me to offer a settlement?" Marcus spat back. "Absolutely not. I want to destroy her. I want her to stand in that courtroom and hear the judge declare that she is worth nothing. Friday at 9 a.m. it is. You should wear the Navy suit. It communicates authority." The courtroom carried the scent of floor polish and old coffee. Marcus was seated at the defendant's table, looking flawless in his Navy suit. Lydia sat in the public gallery just behind him, dressed in a white dress that highlighted her pregnancy, perfectly playing the part of the devoted new partner. Silas Thorne was next to Marcus, scrolling through his emails on a tablet with a gold case. "Calm down, Marcus. This is just a formality." "I just want this to be finished," Marcus grumbled, nervously tapping his foot. At 5 minutes before 9 in the morning, the large oak doors swung open. Marcus glanced back, expecting to see Erin in her usual frumpy gray sweater, looking completely intimidated. A woman entered the courtroom. It was Erin, but an entirely different version of the Erin he knew. She was dressed in a cream-colored suit that was expertly tailored to fit her perfectly. The outfit was elegant, powerful, and it radiated wealth. Her hair, which she normally kept in a messy bun, was professionally styled in soft, shining waves. She wore large sunglasses, which she took off with a slow, deliberate motion, revealing eyes that were sharp and confident. But it was her shoes that Lydia noticed immediately. from the back of the room. They were Louboutins with the signature red soles, the very same ones Lydia had been pleading with Marcus to purchase for her for months. Where did she get the money for that? Marcus whispered to Silas with a frown. She was penniless 3 days ago. Credit cards, I imagine. Silas said dismissively. Going into debt looks terrible during a divorce proceeding. We can use that against her. Erin walked confidently to the plaintiff's table and sat down by herself. She set a single, slim file folder down in front of her. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at Lydia. Her gaze was fixed on the judge's empty chair. Where is her attorney? Marcus sneered. Did he abandon her already? She is representing herself, Silas chuckled. Pro se, oh, this is going to be a bloodbath. The judge despises people who represent themselves. They slow everything down. All rise, the bailiff called out. The Honorable Judge Kincaid presiding. Judge Kincaid, a stern woman known for having no patience for foolishness, sat down at the bench. She rustled through her papers. Case number 4921, Vance versus Vance. Let the record show the parties are present. Silas Thorne for the respondent, Marcus Vance. Silas rose to his feet, buttoning his suit jacket with an air of easy confidence. Ready to proceed, Your Honor. We have a motion to dismiss the case based on an executed prenuptial agreement. And for the plaintiff, the judge said, looking over at Erin. Mrs. Vance, are you planning to represent yourself in this matter? Erin stood. Her voice was strong and clear, easily carrying to the back of the courtroom. No, Your Honor. My legal counsel is just now arriving. He was delayed going through the security checkpoint. Court begins at 9 o'clock sharp, Mrs. Vance, the judge snapped. If he is not present, the large double doors at the rear of the courtroom were thrown open with a loud bang. A sudden silence fell over the room. Striding down the main aisle was a group of 5 lawyers dressed in identical black suits. They moved with a military precision, carrying briefcases that looked more like they held state secrets than legal documents. At their head was a man whose presence seemed to command all the attention in the room. He was tall and imposing, with a chiseled jawline. He was wearing a 3-piece suit that made Silas Thorne's expensive attire look like it had been bought off a clearance rack. Marcus felt an icy chill snake down his back. He knew that face. Everyone in the business world knew that face. It had been on the cover of Fortune magazine just last month. It was Julian Vanderquilt, the billionaire chief executive officer of the Vanderquilt conglomerate, one of America's most influential men. Marcus's brain simply shut down. Why was Julian Vanderquilt in this room? Had he bought the courthouse? Julian didn't even pause in the gallery. He walked directly through the swinging gate, went right past Marcus, treating him like an invisible piece of furniture, and stood beside Erin. He put a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of complete protection and authority. My name is Julian Vanderquilt, he stated, his deep and resonant voice filling the courtroom without any need for a microphone. And I am representing the plaintiff, Erin Vanderquilt. A stunned silence swept across the room. The stenographer's fingers froze mid-type. Even Judge Kincaid glanced over her glasses, her eyebrows raised in surprise. Vanderquilt, Marcus whispered, as all the color vanished from his face. He looked over at Silas. Why did he use the name Vanderquilt? Silas Thorne was no longer checking his phone. He was staring at Julian with the expression of someone who just realized he brought a butter knife to a gunfight. His hands were literally shaking. Your Honor, Silas stammered as he got to his feet, his usual slick confidence completely gone. I was not informed that Mr. Vanderquilt is a licensed attorney in this jurisdiction. I am licensed to practice in New York, London, and Washington State, Julian replied coolly, without even looking in Silas's direction. He took a document from his briefcase and slid it over to the judge. 'My credentials, Your Honor, along with my notice of appearance. Julian then turned slowly to look directly at Marcus. His eyes were cold, empty, and utterly terrifying. "And for the benefit of the court," Julian added, speaking to everyone, but fixing his gaze on Marcus. "The plaintiff's name is not Vance. She has gone back to using her maiden name. I'm quite sure the respondent is familiar with it. Or maybe not." Julian offered a smile that was all teeth, like a shark. Perhaps he never took the time to find out who his wife truly was. Marcus sank back into his chair. He looked at Erin, really looked at her, and suddenly he saw the family resemblance, that same distinct nose, the same sharp line of her chin. He hadn't married a nobody. He had married the heiress to an empire he could only ever dream of, and he had just demanded she walk away with nothing. "I am ready to proceed, Your Honor," Julian announced. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was the kind of heavy quiet you normally find at a funeral, or in the moments before a jury reads its verdict. Silas Thorne, a lawyer who billed at $800 an hour and took pride in his unflappable demeanor, was staring at his tablet as if it had just grown fangs and bitten him. He was frantically swiping at the screen, searching for any information on Aaron Vanderquilt. When the results appeared, his already pale face turned a ghostly shade of white. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Cade said, her patience clearly wearing thin, "are you prepared to address the motion to dismiss?" Silas swallowed nervously and loosened his tie. "Yes, Your Honor. We contend that the prenuptial agreement signed by Ms. Vanderquilt, relinquishes all rights to any marital assets. It is a standard, airtight document." Marcus leaned forward, whispering with fury, "Why do you look so terrified? It is just a name. She is still the same broke librarian." Julian Vanderquilt did not bother to sit down. He stood at the podium, his stance as relaxed as a predator observing its cornered prey. "Your Honor," Julian started, his voice as smooth as silk, but with an edge like a razor blade. "Mr. Thorne calls the prenup standard. It is far from it. It is a cruel and oppressive document created to take advantage of a partner with less apparent power, but we are not here today to debate the fairness of this agreement." Marcus smirked. Good, he thought. He knows he has no way to beat the contract. "We are here," Julian went on, "to enforce it." Marcus's brow wrinkled in confusion. "Enforce it?" Julian opened a binder made of fine leather. "Article 6, Section B of this agreement specifies, in the case of a divorce, both individuals will keep sole ownership of any assets they had before the marriage, and any inheritance they received during it. Is that accurate, Mr. Thorne?" "Yes," Silas answered, sounding bewildered. "That is what protects Marcus's company." "Is that so?" Julian smiled, because that clause also protects Aaron's assets. "And since my client is the beneficiary of the Vanderquilt Trust, which was set up for her when she turned 18, her personal net worth at the time she signed this prenup was roughly, let's see here." Julian held up a single sheet of paper, pretending to read it closely. $450 million. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. A journalist in the back row began typing furiously on his device. Marcus felt all the blood rush from his face as he gripped the edge of the table. "That is a lie," he hissed. "She was a librarian. She bought her clothes from second-hand stores." Julian replied without even glancing at Marcus. "She lives a modest life, unlike some people. She does not need to advertise her wealth to feel secure in it." Julian turned to a new page. "Now, this is the part that becomes truly problematic for Mr. Vance. The prenuptial agreement includes a clause requiring full disclosure of all financial assets. Both parties swore under oath that they had revealed all their assets and debts before signing. If either party was dishonest, the entire agreement can be voided by the wronged party. Marcus shot to his feet, shouting, "I disclosed everything I owned." Judge Conincade ordered sharply, "Sit down, Mr. Vance." Julian asked calmly, "Did you, really?" He then motioned to an associate, who gave a large bundle of documents to the bailiff for the judge and the defense team. 3 years ago, Mr. Vance, you stated that your company, Vance Architecture, was financially sound. You also claimed personal ownership of the penthouse in the Obsidian Tower. However, these bank records, which we subpoenaed this morning, reveal a different story. The penthouse was held by a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. That corporation was technically bankrupt at the time because of a failed hotel development in Miami, a project you neglected to include on your disclosure forms. Silas Thorne frantically flipped through the new documents, and sweat began to form on his brow. "Objection! This is not relevant." Julian's voice grew hard. "The relevance, Your Honor, is that Mr. Vance committed fraud to persuade my client to sign that agreement. He needed her to think he was financially secure when he was not. In truth, he was already drowning in debt. But this said where the situation takes an unexpected turn." Julian leaned forward, his eyes fixed directly on Marcus. "Because Mr. Vance committed fraud, we have the right to void the prenuptial agreement. But we are not going to do that. Instead, we are choosing to enforce the penalty clause. Article 9. It states that if one party concealed debts greater than $100,000, that party must forfeit 50% of their marital asset appreciation to the other spouse as a penalty." Julian paused to let the words sink in. "Mr. Vance's company has increased in value over the past 3 years, largely because of the new City Stadium contract. That is a contract he secured using designs that we can prove were significantly shaped by my client's unacknowledged contributions." Marcus lost all control and screamed, "She is a librarian. She does not know a single thing about architecture." Erin rose to her feet. She did not need Julian's help for this part. She looked directly into Marcus's eyes. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Who corrected the load-bearing calculations for the West Wing design, Marcus? Who was the one that suggested using cross-laminated timber to reduce the carbon footprint, which was the specific reason the City Council awarded you the contract?" She let the questions hang in the air. "You were drunk on scotch that evening. I sat down at your computer, and I fixed your mistakes." Marcus's mouth fell open, but no words came out. He remembered. He could recall waking up to find the work completed, assuming he must have done it himself during an alcoholic blackout. He had never bothered to ask. He had simply taken all the credit. Julian delivered the final blow. "We are freezing Mr. Vance's assets while we conduct a full audit of his actual financial position. We are also filing suit for 50% of Vance Architecture, in addition to all legal fees. And since my hourly rate is substantially higher than Mr. Thorne's, that will be a very large bill." Judge Conincade reviewed the evidence. She looked over at Marcus, who was now visibly trembling. "Motion to dismiss is denied," the judge declared, striking her gavel with finality. "A temporary restraining order on all assets of Vance Architecture is granted. Mr. Vance, you will provide complete access to all of your financial records to Mr. Vanderquilt's forensic accountants by 5 p.m. today." Silas let out a panicked squeak. 5 p.m., Your Honor? That is only 6 hours from now." The judge replied dryly, "Then you had better get busy making copies. Court is adjourned." Leaving the courthouse was like running through a storm. The media had already caught the Vanderquilt name. Camera flashes went off everywhere. Reporters shouted questions. "Erin, is it true that you are the Vanderquilt heiress?" Marcus, were you aware that your wife is a billionaire? Mr. Vanderquilt, do you plan on buying the Seahawks? Julian's security detail pushed through the crowd of reporters like a bulldozer. Marcus, however, was completely surrounded. He shoved his way through the microphones, his face a picture of pure panic. Lydia trailed just behind him, looking as if she might be sick at any moment. Marcus, what is happening? Lydia hissed as they finally fell into his Mercedes. Is she really getting half of the company? Marcus slammed his hand against the steering wheel. Shut up, Lydia. She is not getting anything. This is just a trick. It is all smoke and mirrors. He insisted, I am the architect. I am the genius behind it all. They cannot do this to me. But his hands were shaking so violently that he could not fit the key into the ignition. He sped recklessly back to the Vance Architecture headquarters on Fifth Avenue. He had to shred paperwork. He had to delete the emails about the failed Miami project. He needed to transfer the money from the offshore accounts before the asset freeze was enforced. He burst through the doors into his firm's lobby, expecting the normal sounds of business, the receptionists' greetings, and interns rushing by with coffee. The lobby was completely silent. In the middle of the room stood 4 individuals in dark business suits with identification badges clipped to their jackets. They were packing files into boxes. What is this? Marcus roared as he stormed past the front desk. Who are all of you? A woman with short, gray hair stepped toward him. Mr. Vance, I am Agent Miller with the Forensic Audit Division. We are acting on the authority of the court-appointed receiver. Marcus stared in disbelief. Receiver? I own this company. Building. That is no longer the case, sir, Agent Miller stated plainly. The bank is calling your loans due, specifically the commercial mortgage for this building and the credit line that covered your payroll. The bank needs to give 30 days notice before they can do that. Not when there has been a significant negative change in the borrower's financial situation, the agent countered. The asset freeze, ordered by Judge Kincaid 1 hour ago, qualifies as a significant change. Seattle First Bank is invoking its right to demand full and immediate payment. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Seattle First Bank. He could hear Julian's voice in his head. Vanderquilt Industries finalized the acquisition of Seattle First Bank this afternoon. He had stumbled directly into their trap. Julian did not just file a lawsuit against him. He purchased the very foundation Marcus was standing on, and now he was yanking it away. Marcus. He spun around to see his chief financial officer, David, exiting his office, holding a cardboard box filled with his belongings. David's face was ashen. David, you have to tell them. Tell them we have the cash on hand. We do not, Marcus, David mumbled, refusing to meet his gaze. You used up our reserves on the renovations for the penthouse and the engagement ring for Miss Cross. Lydia, who had just entered the room, stopped in her tracks. Every eye in the office is darted to the enormous diamond on her hand. In an instant, it transformed from a token of love into a piece of incriminating evidence. I am submitting my resignation, Marcus, David said under his breath. I cannot get caught up in a fraud investigation. I have a family to think about. You gutless coward, Marcus shouted. I am the one who made you. You exploited us, David shot back. Then he walked straight out the door. Marcus bolted toward his office, but the handle would not turn. A security guard, undoubtedly one of Julian's new hires, stood in his way. Your access has been revoked, Mr. Vance. This is my private office. Not until the financial audit is finished, sir. We are asking you to leave the premises, or we will be forced to escort you out. Marcus staggered backward, his breath catching in his throat. He scanned the wide-open office. All of his employees, the architects, the designers, the engineers, were all staring at him. He saw no support in their faces, just secondhand embarrassment. They already knew. They had seen the reports. They knew their boss had thrown out his wife, only to discover she could buy and sell him a dozen times over. His eyes found Lydia. She stood near the elevator, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. Lydia, listen, we will drive to the lake house. We can sort all of this out. Lydia glanced up, and her entire demeanor had shifted. The wide-eyed admiration he was used to had vanished, replaced with a cold, strategic look that was unsettlingly familiar. The lake house? She questioned. The one you told me was solely in your name? Or does a shell corporation own that one too? It is a bit complicated, but we are a team, are we not? We are having a baby boy. Lydia's gaze dropped to her belly, and then returned to his face. I require stability, Marcus. You promised me a comfortable life. You told me there would be no chaos. This, she said, motioning toward the federal agents and the packing boxes. This is not comfort. This is a federal crime. I am the one being wronged here, Marcus insisted. She deceived me. She acted like she had nothing. And you acted like you were wealthy, Lydia replied without emotion. The elevator chimed as it arrived. I am heading to my sister's place. Do not contact me until you have cleaned up this mess. Lydia, you are pregnant with my son and heir. She walked into the elevator car. What I am carrying is a risk. The door slid shut. Marcus was left standing by himself in the main hall of an empire he had constructed with deceit. The receptionist's phone began to ring. It was a journalist. A second line lit up, then a third. He spun toward the exit, stumbling through the doors and onto the sidewalk. He pulled out his phone to phone Silas, but the screen lit up with an alert. It was a new email from Vanderquilt Industries. The subject line read, Settlement Offer. With shaking hands, Marcus tapped the message open. Mr. Vance, we will agree to drop the fraud allegations and will not force your personal bankruptcy if you agree to the terms below. First, you will sign the uncontested divorce documents without delay. Second, you will issue a public statement acknowledging that the primary design for the city stadium was the creation of Aaron Vanderquilt. Third, you will step down as Chief Executive Officer of Vance Architecture and sign over your controlling shares to Aaron Vanderquilt for the price of $1. You have 60 minutes. Julian Vanderquilt. Marcus just stared at his phone. $1. His entire life's work was being valued at a single dollar. He tilted his head back, feeling the rain start to fall again. Marcus was sitting in a conference room at the law firm that used to represent him. Silas Thorne had removed himself from the case an hour earlier, claiming a conflict of interest as soon as Julian's legal team began sending threats of a malpractice suit. Marcus was completely on his own. The 1-hour deadline had passed. The door swung open. It was not a group of attorneys this time. It was only Aaron and Julian. Aaron strode to the far end of the table. She laid a single, crisp sheet of paper on the polished wood. Next to it, she set down a pen. Marcus raised his head. His eyes were red and swollen. His tie was pulled loose. His expensive suit was a wrinkled mess. He looked as if he had aged 10 years since sunrise. Aaron? His voice was a dry rasp. We can find a solution. Please, I know you loved me once. Aaron gazed at him with an expression he could not decipher. It was not hatred. It was not fury. It was pity. And that look wounded Marcus far more than shouting ever could. I love the man I believed you to be, Marcus, she said gently. I love the man who said he wanted to create things that would endure, but you do not create, you only take. I was desperate, Marcus begged, getting to his feet with unsteady hands. The entire market was in free fall. I had to have the stadium contract to keep us afloat. I did all of it for our future. Stop, Julian interjected, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. He had not moved from his spot by the door, like a silent guard. Do not insult her by lying. You did it for yourself. You did it so you could get a larger yacht and trade your wife in for a newer version. Marcus collapsed back into his chair. If I sign this, I will lose everything. My name will be ruined. I will never find work in this town again. Your name is already ruined, Aaron stated calmly. The news travels quickly, Marcus. Vance fraud is already a trending topic on Twitter. The American Institute of Architects has already suspended your license while they investigate. It is finished. She tapped her finger on the document. This is an act of mercy, Marcus. If you sign, Julian will call off his investigators. You will stay out of prison for bank fraud. You get to walk away, penniless, but a free man. Marcus looked down at the paper. Transfer of ownership. For consideration of $1. What about Lydia? Marcus whispered. Lydia's attorney called my office 20 minutes ago, Julian said, glancing at his watch. She is making an arrangement. She is offering information about your offshore bank accounts if you grant her immunity. She is gone for good, Marcus. The silence in the room became thick and unbearable. Marcus Vance, the man who dreamed of being a king, reached for the pen. His hand was shaking so badly that the ink bled onto the page as he scrawled his name. He slid the document across the table to Aaron. Aaron slipped a hand into her coat pocket. She took out a single wrinkled dollar bill. It was old and soft, from being passed through many hands. Here, she said, pushing it toward him. Marcus gaped at the bill. The face of George Washington seemed to stare right back. Take it, Aaron ordered. Marcus's hand reached out and closed around the bill. It felt like it was scorching his skin. Get out, Julian said flatly. Marcus pushed himself to his feet. He walked toward the door on heavy legs. He stopped with his hand on the doorknob, looking back at the woman he had so foolishly underestimated. What will you do with the firm? He asked, his voice empty. You are a librarian. You have no idea how to lead a company like this. Aaron smiled, a real, radiant smile he had not seen in a very long time. I am not going to lead it, Marcus. I am going to take it apart, and then I am going to build something worthwhile. Marcus stepped out of the room. The elevator was there, waiting. He got in, the doors shut, and he rode it down into oblivion. The alarm clock on the ground buzzed at 5:30 in the morning, a grating metallic sound that shook the cheap linoleum floor. Marcus Vance swung his legs off the mattress, his back screaming in protest. There was no bed frame, only a box spring lying on the floor of a studio apartment in Renton, a world away from the glittering skyscrapers of downtown Seattle. The room carried the smell of old instant coffee and the ever-present, damp, musty odor of the Pacific Northwest that always found a way inside the single-pane window. Marcus rubbed his unshaven face. He had not used a razor in 3 days. The blades were a luxury now, and when you earn a construction worker's wage, you learn to make do. He got dressed in the dim light, pulling on heavy work pants that were stiff, with plaster dust, a worn-out flannel shirt, and steel-toed boots that squeezed his feet. He did not slip into a fine Italian suit. He did not fasten a Rolex to his wrist. He felt his pockets for his keys, a bus pass, and a folded, crumpled dollar bill he kept tucked away in a hidden flap of his wallet. He drank his coffee black, leaning over the kitchen sink and looking at himself in the tarnished mirror. The swagger was gone from his expression, replaced with a deep, haunting look of exhaustion. It was Tuesday, but it was not just an ordinary Tuesday. Marcus had to take 2 separate buses to reach the city. He always sat at the very back with his cap pulled down, avoiding the gaze of the other riders lost in their phones. He used to be the one sitting in the back of a private car, scrolling through emails on a tablet and feeling annoyed by the morning commute. Now he was just part of the commute he used to despise. He stepped off the bus at 4th and Pike and walked for 6 blocks. He knew he should not have come. It was a form of self-punishment, nothing more. But he could not resist. The construction project that had been the start of his downfall was now complete. 6 months prior, this very spot was meant to be the Vance Millennium Tower, a tribute to his own ambition, a sharp glass spike aimed at the clouds. He had gambled his marriage, his principles, and his own soul to make it happen. Now, standing on the opposite side of the street, shivering in his jacket against the sharp autumn breeze, he saw what it had become instead. The new building was shorter, more inviting. The harsh, aggressive lines from his own design were gone, replaced by softer curves. The exterior was not cold, polished steel. It was a mix of reclaimed wood and vertical gardens that made the whole building feel alive, as if it were breathing with the city. A huge banner, stretched between two old oak trees, announcing the grand opening of the Aaron Vance Community Center and Public Library. He felt a pit in his stomach as he realized she had kept his last name. It was not a sign of respect, but a constant public reminder of her victory. She had taken his name, a brand he'd spent years linking with wealth and power, and transformed it into a symbol of generosity and public service. It was as if she had remade his identity without ever asking. A diverse crowd began to form, filled not with the high society people he once chased, but with everyday folks. He saw students carrying heavy backpacks, older couples walking hand in hand, and young mothers guiding their strollers. An authentic energy buzzed through the air, a genuine excitement Marcus had never managed to create, even with all his public relations firms. And in that moment, he saw her. Aaron stepped onto the elevated plaza. For a second, Marcus forgot how to breathe. She looked transformed. It was not just the expensive cream cashmere coat she wore, but an aura of freedom that surrounded her. The constant tension that had gripped her shoulders during their marriage had completely vanished. Her hair flowed freely, dancing in the wind. She was laughing at something the man beside her said. Marcus had to squint to see him clearly. The man was tall, dressed in a tweed jacket and glasses. He didn't have the predatory look of Julian. He seemed more like an academic or a writer with a gentle face. He rested a hand on the small of Aaron's back, a gesture so casual, so intimate, it struck Marcus like a physical blow. A voice suddenly echoed from the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor began, "welcome to a brand new chapter for Seattle." Marcus could only watch the ceremony, feeling like a ghost at his own funeral. He stood there and listened as the mayor celebrated the vision of a woman who knew that a home was more than just four walls. It was a community. Then Aaron approached the microphone. "Thank you," she said. Her voice rang out, clear and strong across the plaza, echoing off the surrounding glass towers. "A year ago, I was informed that I had no place in this city's future. I was told that a person's value is based on what they can acquire." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience. For one heart-stopping moment, Marcus was certain she had spotted him. He instinctively ducked behind the cover of a street lamp. "But I have since learned that true worth is measured by what you can give," Aaron declared, her hand gently resting on her stomach. The small curve of a baby bump was just visible beneath the cashmere. Marcus gripped the cold metal pole for support. A baby. Lydia had ended her pregnancy just a week after the scandal hit the news, refusing to be connected to a ruined outcast. She had left for Los Angeles to chase after a movie producer. But Aaron was starting a family. "This center," Aaron announced, gesturing to the building behind her, "was built from the ashes of a terrible mistake. We tore down a monument of ego to lay a foundation for everyone. This library is for the student searching for a quiet corner to dream." This legal clinic is for the partner who needs help escaping a dangerous situation. This is for all of you." The applause that followed was thunderous. It was not the polite, restrained clapping of high society. It was a genuine roar of gratitude and support. Marcus felt a single tear roll down his cheek, cold with anger. He angrily wiped it away. He had erected skyscrapers. He had collected awards. But no one had ever looked at him with the kind of admiration that crowd showed for her. "She's incredible, isn't she?" Marcus nearly jumped out of his skin. A woman holding a bag of groceries was standing beside him, smiling toward the stage. "I knew her once," Marcus mumbled, his voice hoarse. "You're very lucky," the woman replied. "She's the one who saved this neighborhood. That developer, Vance, the one who wanted to destroy the community garden for his own project. I heard he's in prison or something now. Good riddance." Marcus pulled his collar up higher. "Yeah, good riddance." Back on the stage, it was time for the ribbon cutting. Julian Vanderquilt came forward. He appeared as powerful as ever, yet a certain softness entered his eyes when he looked at his sister. He passed her the large scissors. Aaron snipped the ribbon. A jazz band immediately started a lively tune. Confetti, made from biodegradable recycled leaves, showered down on the joyful crowd. Marcus turned and walked away. He could no longer stand to watch their happiness. It felt too bright, and his world had become too dark. He continued down the street, his work boots feeling heavy on the concrete. He walked past a fancy furniture store the Taipei and Lydia used to frequent. In the large window, he saw his own reflection, a weary, middle-aged man who worked with his hands with nothing left but a sore back and a story nobody would ever believe. He dug into his pocket and took out the dollar bill. He pressed it flat against the storefront window. Transfer of ownership. Consideration, $1. It was not just the sale price of his empire. It was the price of his own arrogance. It was the exact value Aaron had assigned to his threats, his power, and his intimidation. He understood in that moment that he had lost far more than just his wealth. He had been completely erased. Aaron had not ruined him out of revenge. She had simply outgrown him. She had taken his bitterness and used it as fertilizer to cultivate something beautiful. "Spare change?" a homeless man asked from a crate on the corner, shaking a small paper cup. Marcus stared at the man. Then he looked at the dollar bill in his hand. It was the last dollar he had until his paycheck on Friday. He needed it to buy a sandwich, but holding it felt like holding a lead weight. It was a cursed reminder of his downfall. "Here," Marcus said, dropping the dollar into the man's cup. "Bless you, sir," the man said gratefully. "Don't," Marcus answered grimly. "It's worthless." He walked to the bus stop and blended into the gray city landscape, disappearing into the backdrop of a world he once believed he ruled. Meanwhile, back at the plaza, the crowd began to thin out, with many people entering the warm, bright lobby of the new center. Julian approached Aaron and offered her a bottle of water. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his eyes carefully scanning the area. Security mentioned they saw a man who matched his description on the southeast corner, near 4th and Pike. Aaron took a drink of water. She glanced toward the corner where the bus stop was located. The street was now empty. "I know," she replied. "I felt his presence. Do you want me to have him removed? I can get a restraining order issued before lunch." Aaron simply shook her head, a faint, sad smile on her face. She turned her attention to Liam, who was busy showing a group of children where the kids' reading room was. "No, Julian," she said. "Let him watch. Let him see what true power really is." She then placed a reassuring hand on her brother's arm. "Besides, he is trapped in a prison that he built himself. Its walls are made of regret, and there is no chance of parole from that." Julian nodded slowly. "You are too good for him. You always were, even when you were hiding away in that library. I was not hiding, Aaron corrected him gently, linking her arm in his. I was reading, and I learned that every villain is just a hero who has forgotten how to love. Well, Julian smirked, buttoning his coat, this villain is starving, and since you are the philanthropist of the year, lunch is on you. Aaron let out a laugh, a sound that was clear and pure, free from the weight of her past. Deal, but we are going to that taco truck on 3rd. I have a craving for spicy tacos. The billionaire chief executive officer raised an eyebrow. I was thinking of Liegos, Julian. This is a democracy now. They walked down the community center steps together. The brother who had once brought the storm and the sister who had brought the cleansing rain, leaving the shattered glass castle behind them to construct something that was truly built to last. Aaron's transformation from a silent wife into a force for justice is a powerful lesson. Never assume that silence means weakness. Marcus Vance was convinced he held all the power because he was the one with the loud voice and the prestigious career. He completely missed that real strength does not need to shout from the rooftops. It simply waits for its moment. In the end, the glass castle that Marcus constructed came crashing down because it was built on a foundation of lies. He didn't lose because Aaron had a rich brother. He lost because he fatally underestimated the character of the woman sleeping next to him each night. He was so busy chasing the illusion of success that he lost the reality of love. Aaron did more than just take his money. She seized control of his entire story. She transformed a monument to corporate greed into a safe haven for the community. She proved that the ultimate revenge is not just about defeating your enemy. It is about building a life so successful that they could never have even imagined it. She walked away with everything that mattered. Not because she was a Vanderquilt, but because she was finally, truly herself. If you found yourself cheering when Julian stormed into that courtroom, or if you felt that surge of victory when Aaron handed Marcus that one single dollar bill, please hit that like button right now. Your support helps us bring you more stories of justice and ultimate triumph. What would you have done in Aaron's shoes? Would you have taken over the company, or would you have made sure Marcus went to jail? Tell me what you think in the comments section below. I promise I read every single one, and remember to subscribe and click the notification bell so you do not miss the next chapter in our saga of betrayal and revenge. Until we meet again, always remember that the truth will win in the end. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and lasting value. Thank you for being part of our story.